right, welcome back to the Business of Laravel podcast, where I talk to business leaders who are working in and with Laravel. My guests today are Patrick O'Mara, co-founder and CTO, and Stephen Quayle, co-founder and director of marketing and global business development at Maintainly. So guys, would you introduce yourselves and also tell us who are you individually and what is your business?
Pat, you go first.
Me first? Yeah, okay. So I'm Pat. I am, as Matt said, the CTO of Maintainly, so handle everything tech, everything that that Steve doesn't want to do. Yeah, we've been around since 2008. I think the first line of code was written, and it's been a journey since then.
And I'm Steve. I do everything that Pat doesn't want to do. That involves having many different hats. In terms of, do you want me to give you, Matt, a little bit of background on the product?
Yeah, I'd absolutely love to hear that. Just kind of where did it come from and what's the background?
Yeah, so Pat mentioned 2008. So we actually started developing it as a product specific to one customer. It was actually a partnership with a company called AGL in Australia and an Indian wind turbine manufacturer. And out of that, we started licensing the product off. So they were still using it. We rolled it out in Brazil and in China for them. And then we started licensing the product off globally. I guess we spent, Pat, a few years, or probably many years, where we were still doing agency work.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
I think we wound that down in 2014, right?
Yeah, or maybe even later.
Yeah.
So we were building the product out and basically, I guess paying for the build ourselves off that agency work. So we got to a point where we're like, oh, okay, there's a future in this product. And then we decided to gradually reduce that agency work. So it was kind of trying to get rid of customers, if you will. Maintain enough cash flow to kind of keep building it as we were increasing the licensing fees. So, what is the product? It's computerized maintenance management software, is what it's traditionally known as, CMMS. So that's basically managing the day-to-day maintenance operations for any organization, big or small. Main components being preventative and reactive maintenance, which then leads into predictive maintenance, engineering analysis, things like that, smart devices. So as I mentioned, we started in wind energy. Through that that whole period, and maybe even after we wound down the agency stuff, we spent a lot of time genericizing the product because we had that start in wind. It was kind of very specifically targeted to those customers. And so through that process, we were able to start attracting customers in different industries, manufacturing, facilities, hospitality, hotels, vacation rentals, aged care, churches, gyms, schools, universities, municipalities. We're actually just in the process of onboarding our first airline. A small one, but
still cool.
A step in the right direction. So that's kind of what the product is, and we've got a long roadmap that we're continuing to build out, and we've kind of got our target market that we're going after, and with the philosophy that we don't want to kind of traditionally in this industry, every kind of new player has ended up just being exactly the same as what's come in the past. And so we've got a keen eye on trying not to go down that direction. So we're trying to build out the product accordingly, and with tools like Laravel helping along the way, helping us keep a lean team.
I love that. I know that you guys, kind of did a very good job of describing it, but I still, I have visited your website enough times and seen CMMS enough times, and sometimes it's just hurt my little brain a little bit. So
the C is computerized.
And it's not what I expected, right?
Right.
So if I were, let's say a university, is that because when I think of university, for some reason, because I attended university, I would always see there's the maintenance shack and there's the 6 people who work there, and they clock in, they clock out, and there's the maintenance tools that they use, and there's an assignments. So is it kind of maintaining that sort of thing? Like, you check in, it tells you what you're assigned to, it tells you what your equipment you're using, how out of date is this equipment, is that the type of stuff we're talking about?
Exactly. So it's basically any scenario where there's physical assets under management.
Okay.
And so they might want to extend the life of those assets as much as possible, because obviously when we replace those, there's a large capital outlay. So just the way you see those maintenance workers tending to stuff, there's a grander purpose than just to keep it operating.
Yeah.
Eking out more life of assets in the long term.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
And so that might be that maintenance worker using our mobile app to scan a QR code on the asset to bring up the history of that asset, so that they can learn from what was done in the past to shortcut the process to what actually is going to fix a problem. Or a trainee coming in and being able to learn from that audit trail of maintenance history to learn how to perform these functions. And so, the scenario can be, or the situation can be, relatively simple. Okay, so if it's at a university and fixing a chair or a door or an air conditioner, but it could be like we said, we started in wind energy. It could be engineers using that data for analysis over across the entire fleet to try and keep that, to eke up their uptime from 92% to 94%.
Yeah.
So
that's very cool. Okay.
The scenarios differ a lot.
Okay, that's super helpful. And it's just like the be able to, just the fact that you define it as an asset is really helpful for me, because one of my friends, owns a whole bunch of rental properties, and he's always thinking about, at what point is it worth replacing the dryer, and what things do I do to each dryer every month to make sure they last a little bit longer? And so that, I totally get it. Super great explanation there. I appreciate it. So obviously this is the Business of Laravel podcast. We talk business, but we also talk Laravel. So can you guys kind of share with me, like, how is Laravel actually involved in the day-to-day operations of your business?
So Laravel handles all their traffic on the back end. So we have a REST API of, I think it's about 400 endpoints.
Okay.
And then, so that serves the 2 client apps, which are a React web app and a React Native mobile app.
Okay.
It also does a few things around, PDF generation. It obviously runs all our jobs, our queue workers, and then we actually we're quite big on testing as well. So we have Laravel Dusk that will run in CI, and I think if that runs in one pipeline, it's like 45 minutes. It's just testing all of the, all of the important workflows. It's the main part of the app, for sure, main part of the product.
So, I mean, you guys have I don't know if I would say like mission critical in the same way someone would think about the Defense Department or the banking or something like that, but there are probably entire, groups at your organization, at your clients' organizations, whose entire day in life relies on access to your tool. And without access to your tool, it's very difficult to do their job. So for them, it is mission critical. Did you have any reticence choosing open source or choosing PHP or choosing Laravel specifically when you were going into, you're saying, oh, we got to make sure we use Microsoft's tools because they're the big guys? Or like, what was the decision-making process choosing not just Laravel, but also React and React Native and just the whole kind of tech stack as you all kind of went into it? Yeah,
great question. So, I started coding ActionScript 2, right? That was my first Flash was the big thing. And then ActionScript 3 was object oriented, and that was a big change, that was a big paradigm shift for me. And then we had a contract together ages ago, Steve. When was that? I was 19. And so I'm just trying to...
You're old now, so it was a long time ago.
Not 19 no more.
I can say that because I'm older.
Not anymore, that's right. And so PHP was just handed to us then, right? Like we were working with another developer and he was working PHP. So that got me into PHP. Now, I ended up writing like my own framework kind of based on Active Record. And then this is... Let me kind of think about the years here. I guess that around 2015, it just wasn't cutting it. There was security holes everywhere. And so I was looking around then, and we were loosely based on CodeIgniter. And I was living in San Francisco in 2014, and like PHP was difficult to chat about in San Francisco in 2014. Everyone was
Yeah.
talking about Ruby on Rails, Node, and we all know that PHP kind of wasn't keeping up with those
Yeah.
other technologies, like those competing technologies. And then I found Laravel, and so I was at this point where I was like, we were running a multi-tenancy app, but without, just on stuff that I'd kind of strung together. And so then I looked at Laravel and started moving pieces over to Laravel. So, brought in Eloquent to kind of go over the top of our active record implementation. And then just slowly, I guess it was Laravel 5.2, I would say, is when it actually went into production. And then, everything started going much quicker. Whatever I could hand off to Laravel, I did. Auth, brought in Fortifier when that was a thing. The queues obviously was a big thing. So, yeah, I guess moving to Laravel was great. But yeah, in terms of like the reliability, that was never an issue in my mind. But it is an issue for IT teams of the clients. So that if you go into you have to have a meeting with the IT team, right? And they would say, it's got to. Sometimes we get some crazy stuff, like it's got to be on-prem, it's got to be this, that. And back then I would pull back from saying it was written in PHP. Now, I'm like, it's written in Laravel. Like people know, if they're in the tech world, then they know that there's reliability and there's some stability around it.
Yeah. And Pat, I know you kind of talk about the tech luck, but you also mentioned that you all had kind of started on a contract together. So, Steve, do you have programming in your background?
Well, I don't. I've always been on the business side, as much as Pat's tried to push me to.
So, what's it like for you?
Learn more and help him out, and then I'm like, well, you need to learn all the accounting as well, and the marketing and sales, and sorry, your question.
No, it's fine. What is it like for you kind of operating a software business as a founder of a software business, but not being involved in the software day to day? Is it's something that you enjoy about that, so you don't have to deal with it? Is there something scary about so much depending on something where, I think you're a smart enough guy that you could poke some buttons, but I know that you probably don't feel at a point where you could kind of like take over the tech yourself. Like, what has your experience been like being not the technical lead of a co-founder team?
It's not something I've really thought of or been concerned with, and I don't need to go too far into who I am or what I am, I guess. But it's about building stuff, right? And so you're building a business, or you're building an app, or like it's just the building process.
Yeah.
But Pat and I have worked together for so long, and I actually mentioned this to someone who's just we're onboarding at the moment. Last week or the week before, is that we've kind of been working together for so long that a lot of stuff we just don't even need to discuss anymore. Like yesterday we were together in the office having a long discussion. It was kind of like, well, what else do we have to discuss? Because everything we're talking about, we already know that the other one's kind of on the same page. So gradually over time, it's like a funnel. We've kind of got less to talk about because we've become quite predictable.
I already covered it.
To each other in terms of, this is what you would have been expecting. I know this is what you would have been expecting. And so, bringing that back to answer your question, we've worked together for so long that there's, the trust involved and then that predictability. So we're able to concentrate on our part of the business, knowing that the other one, we're going to get backing.
I love that.
Yeah. So does that answer your
Yes, that's a fantastic
question?
answer. Yeah. I mean, when I started my business, my business partner was a former programmer, but he was like, I'm tired of keeping up with it. And so he really dove in that direction. It allowed me to just focus on coding because I was really tired of getting clients, and so I found a lot of beauty in it. But I know that, people may have different experiences. So I was curious about yours, but that's absolutely a great answer there. So as you guys have continued, I mean, one of the things you talked about is your challenge has been, you know, stepping away from this is a solar, specific thing, a wind specific thing. Sorry, in the narrow constraints you're in, and trying to kind of genericize it so it's accessible to other people. Has there been a temptation, or have you even gone too far in that direction at any point where you're like, oh, now we don't have a niche? Or has it been pretty clear how to step away from that initial practical kind of constraint and know where to stop in terms of making it more generic?
It's definitely risky, because you do tend to find that there's products that we compete with that have really driven up, one vertical, and become really successful in that and got a name for that. And there was a period of time where that was kind of us, because in terms of the renewable energy, we had at one point in Australia and New Zealand, we had about 45% of all installed wind assets using the system in some capacity. So it was a huge part of that kind of market.
Yeah.
So the problem was, as a small company, is that at that point, wind energy was really they're just trying to get wind turbines in the ground, like as quick as possible. It was a race. But inevitably, they're really large enterprise customers that are involved there. So they were looking for quick solutions to implement, so we could provide that. The risk is that at some point they move towards the corporate solution, and so that's an IBM or that's a SAP, and that's was predictable, and that's kind of what we've experienced as well. And so we kind of recognized that some time ago that we had to kind of move. And so then do we pick out some other markets and kind of go after them? And in a way we kind of have, because as you're developing features, you kind of have to look and say, all right, well, what are we going to develop next? And some features are particularly suitable to a certain market, and others are not. So you mentioned your friend that has rental units or holiday units and whatnot, and there's specific features that might be suitable to them. And so you've got to make those choices as you go.
Yeah.
I guess in terms of genericizing, the point is that we've kind of tried to develop the product in a way that many different users can adapt it to their use case.
Yeah, that's cool.
And that's kind of conscious design and development decisions as we implement features and how we implement them, so that we're not excluding anyone, we're not limiting ourselves to any particular market. Will it be, super successful long term? We're still answering that question.
Fingers crossed. So Pat, I kind of have that same question from you from a technical perspective, because often, one of the conversations we have with clients and potential clients as they're figuring this kind of challenge out is, how much do we customize the app for each customer? And the temptation is always to go, fully on-prem. You got a different instance of it for each client. And now you have, you're maintaining 150 different copies of your app, and we're always telling them kind of rein it back in. So have there been any kind of unique technical challenges for you as you've been trying to kind of customize for each client without just turning it into this kind of monstrous mess of configuration switches?
Yeah, well, I think we got to 15 clients, 15 different databases, and I was like, this is too much, So that was when we moved it to a single database multi-tenancy app. But technical challenges, they're always going to be there. The one we've recently worked on is around the automations. So we have time-based and metric-based automations, and so that might be, this particular thing has to happen every week, or this has to happen every 50,000 kilometers, or whatever it is. Or it might be from a sensor, so if the temperature of this thing or the vibration exceeds a certain metric, it's got to trigger a task. So that's been something fun to work on, recently. But there was a moment there, and Steve, you could probably chip in for this one, but like we were kind of setting the internal systems for the wind industry because they were kind of coming to us for that, and so we were learning on the fly off the clients that we'd already built for. So yeah, that was like kind of the human element of it as well as the technical part of it as well. So, putting the internal processes in and just getting people using the app and using the materials, the inventory kind of system. So like I remember going out to one of the sites and we were taking photos of all the parts and we were putting a barcoding system in. And we recently redid that, right? So what we needed to do was have a globally unique identifier for the materials, but have it so it wasn't too long, so people could remember it, right? So we ended up having a 10 character only alpha characters, but we took out O because we didn't want it to get confused with 0, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking about this for ages, right? We say, all right, well, we need QR codes for materials. And so the things that I didn't want to do, I didn't want people on the mobile app having to swap to different keyboard to put in numbers. Okay. So I just wanted to keep it all
that's clever.
alpha characters, but I didn't want to have an O in there, right? So we have a 25 character set, but you can do a lot with that character set. You only have to put in 2 letters, and you have pinpointed a material of like, I think it's like 625, right? 25 power of 2s, 625. And then if you go a third character, then you're up to like 15,000 and something, right? And I remember explaining all this to Steve, and he's looking at me like I'm a madman. And I'm like, but this is really important at the moment, right? We don't want people switching keyboards, but we need to have unique identifiers, like globally unique identifiers that, we can't give someone a UUID and expect them to remember it. But so anyway, so they only have to remember like the first 2 or 3 characters, and they've kind of pinpointed it out of quite a few. So yeah, there's some fun ones in there, but they always kind of come back to the user. What's going to make it better for the user? What's going to make it more user friendly?
And I think relating that back to our industry, because something like that is really a complete re-education for our customers, because you can imagine the type of customers that we have on the maintenance side. It's not really a business side. They're maintenance workers that have used these systems that have a standard numbering system their whole career, wired in it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's how I remember it. That's how I want to know it. And then trying to re-educate them to changes like that are going to increase their ability to use the app and improve their whole experience, because you're saying, okay, well, all you have to remember is 2 letters from that part, and you'll cut through a database of thousands of parts that you want to select from. So, and I guess that's our approach, is trying as best as we can to implement some of those new things, and not have too much re-education of our customers, and kind of not be, as I was saying before, just replicating what's come in the past with other CMMS and just being like, well, that's the way it's always been done, so we're just going to keep on doing it that way. We'll just be the new one of that.
Yeah.
Right.
So that leads me to kind of an interesting aspect of the conversation, which is people always have an idea for an app they want to build for some industry people they don't care about. Oh, well, I met a realtor, and realtors need a tool that does this. And my first thing is like, do you want to spend all day talking to realtors and learning about realtors and going to realtor conferences and interviewing realtors and going along for a ride along with a realtor? Because otherwise, you're not going to be able to understand what their constraints and their concerns are. So for you guys, what was it like? Kind of what was the in? You said you were building it for this client, so that was kind of your initial in. But is there a point at which you all had to really immerse yourself in the world of maintenance in order to do a better job of understanding and empathizing with the customers, or has it all come pretty natural the whole way through?
Well, I mean, without going too far back, we kind of did that from the start, because when we built it for the wind industry, we went and stayed at a wind farm. We went and climbed the towers with,
yes, this is the story I wanted.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
well, I mean, okay. Well, we said we weren't going to start with the pub, but we can go back to the pub. But, that's how the product started. I met a Danish guy at a birthday party in a pub, and we had a few drinks. And next thing, we're having bets over whether you can kick an Australian rules football further than a soccer ball. And one thing led to another. And he says, "Oh, we need some software. Come into the office on Monday." So this is how we kind of got into the wind energy, because the Danish are really big on the wind side.
Yeah.
And so that kind of flowed on to, Pat and I went and stayed at a wind farm. This was when most of the towers didn't have lifts. So, you've got to climb the 80 meters up to the top vertically. So I'm sure Pat can still remember stopping at the first platform for a little rest.
All these upper body work.
Yeah, so you're in the tower, you're sweating.
Yeah.
These technicians have, forearms. Yeah. These huge forearms from climbing up. And so we kind of wanted to do that from the start and follow them and see what are the pain points. Now, so that gave us kind of good foundation of that. And now we learn different industries. We learn about the rental properties, and we learn about hospitals and what they need. And that just comes, like any other product, just talking to the customer and understanding their pain points. But bringing it back to what we were discussing before is, as Pat always says, just tell me the problem, because a lot of customers want to give you the solution up front, but whereas really we want to hear what the problem is, and that's also respecting the customer as well, because also you don't want to be coming at it from the other angle, like I know better, we know better than you do, because it's a joint effort. With the customer to kind of get to the right place. You have to have all of those elements in order to improve the product.
Yeah. So if we have some people listening, and this is always the case, who look at the two of you, look at your career, look at your company, look at your success, and look at the place you've been able to kind of set yourself up and want to be where you are today, what are some things that have helped you to get here? And this could be books, videos, articles, experiences, previous jobs, or whatever else. And I want each of you to answer this. I guess we can start with Pat, because you're higher on my screen. But each of you, what has gotten you here, and what could somebody do to kind of help get to a similar place?
I know Pat's going to go first, but the instant answer for me is Pat.
All right. I love that.
Yeah. Go for it, Pat.
I mean, we were young when we started this, for sure. And if you had asked me, when I was 22 or whatever, would I be in maintenance software? I probably would have ran as far as I could. But yeah, as Steve said, we've kind of grown with the product. We've learned all the different industries. What got me here? Not like technically wise, the coding book that I've probably got the most out of is Refactoring to Collections, Adam Weatherman. That was like,
I love that.
Cleaned up like a lot of my code and kind of made it pretty, and that was like when I was moving and learning more about Laravel. And so that kind of gave me a big sense of pride in the work that I was doing and the way, not just the optimization, but the way it looked, the way it read. Another big book for me has been, well, actually, I should mention that I haven't read Radical Candor, right? And if once I had read that, that would probably be the answer, right?
Sure, because it is for everybody in the podcast, apparently.
I did hear that a lot. The book for me was How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
Great book.
It was written in like 1936. And I read it ages ago, and for the most part, I was doing a lot of those things outside of the business world, right? Because I'm not overly dealing with people. That's kind of Steve's responsibility. But outside of work, I definitely like a community builder. Like I run PHP Melbourne. well, now PHP XML, because we jumped on that PHP X bandwagon, which has been great.
Yeah.
But I build communities around, whether it's what the kids are doing with the school, with sport. And so like remembering people's names, remembering something interesting about them, goes a long way. Yeah. So, yeah, I guess that's
Okay.
over to you, Steve.
Right. So, we touched on it earlier in terms of like building things, and before getting into specifics, books and influences and whatnot. I think, in terms of Pat and I, and Pat mentioned it yesterday. Actually, it's like the yin and the yang. But we're both similar in terms of liking to build things. And that goes across other aspects of our life, because a lot of what we talk about is, like, what home project have you done? And we've renovated houses and
the combi van.
Yeah, Pat's got the combi van, and it might be, repointing is the concrete out the back, or redoing the fireplace. And I've been renovating a house for 5 years, and so a lot of those same skills and interests. I think it's just like building something, that's at its kind of core, and that's helped us along the way, both liking the building aspect. And so you're building a product, you're building a house, you're building a business, and the satisfaction that comes along with that. That's the big driver. In terms of influences along the way, I like also an old book, I guess old now, is Good to Great, which is Jim Collins. And there's probably two aspects in that which I like to apply to the business. And he popularized the flywheel effect, so creating momentum from small wins, so accumulating that over time. And I think as an Australian business, it's more of a conservative approach. Traditionally, even if you look at the Australian businesses that have made it big, Canva maybe not so much, but Atlassian and whatnot, there's always been this concentration on profitability from the start. And it's definitely more of a conservative approach here, rather than kind of just like buy the market and then work it out later. And so, the flywheel effect, so, small wins and just compounding, and just, it creates really good discipline in everything across the business, from building it to dealing with customers to, how trustworthy you can be to them, things like that. And the second thing, there was a lot in that book, but the second thing that he kind of popularized there was the hedgehog concept. So, core areas where you're going to be best at in the world, and we talk about it, not trying to be everything to everyone, and really zeroing in on who are we trying to sell this product to right at this point in time. Let's push aside some of the noise of what others are doing, and be the best at that, and stay focused at that. And where does that intersect with what you're passionate about? And so that comes back down to the building process. And then the third aspect is what makes economic sense. So you've got to make it work, and so you've got to sell the product as well. So I think there's some elements of those that we've tried to implement in the business as well. At least I have.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. I've really enjoyed kind of hearing the collaborative and relational nature of y'all's like kind of connection with each other. You're obviously friends, and yet you live across the world from each other. And you both have mentioned, I don't remember if it was before or during, being in Australia, and we've talked about Chicago and Wisconsin, Milwaukee, somewhere up north of Chicago, and San Diego, and all these different things. And I know that your team, your founder group, and also your clientele are spread out across the world in a way that I think is pretty unique when you're not talking about a company with thousands of people, right? Like at a normal, small to medium business, you guys are pretty spread out. What are some aspects of that have been brought about kind of interesting challenges? And are there things that you're still kind of like, this is still a struggle, or something you're really proud of how you solved with the distributed everything of your team?
I mean, I can go first if you want, Pat, while you're thinking, but we have
Yeah.
talked about this recently in terms of, when COVID came along, we just kind of kept operating on as we were because we had those
Yep.
systems in place.
Yeah.
And so we've been doing that for long enough now that we've ironed a lot of that out. Um, you know, Pat might mention about specifics in terms of like identifying things that help with the communication. But in terms of tools, like everything from the technologies that we choose, has to be built around that. Like we very rarely hesitate in implementing a tool that even if there's, small cost involved, if it's going to help in that process, then we will generally go for it. And it's allowed us to stay efficient, lean, and kind of gets things done remotely. Probably. That's. I mean, I don't know what else to say about that. Is that we were kind of onto that early, but we've also, I guess, through that process, it's given us the benefit of traveling around because I know that I've lived in 3 cities in the US, and Pat can talk to his travels through that. So in building the business, it's also given us the flexibility in life as well to do things that we probably wouldn't have been able to do otherwise as well.
Yeah.
Well, from a business point of view, like it was difficult. Do you remember, Steve, when we had, I think, US dollars and British pounds, but this is before, merchant of record stuff was so readily available. So like moving to things like Paddle and Stripe has just been game changing on that front.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we went remote in 2010 is when we closed the Melbourne office down. Steve, we had good growth over in the US in just Wind. So that was just when we were Wind. So Steve went over there to kind of handle that, that industry in that one country, right? Which is worked out quite well because, it extended our support hours quite a lot. So Steve would be supporting Europe. And we had, obviously Australia, New Zealand. So it gave us, support-wise, it gave us a bigger window. Team-wise, we've got a handbook that we give to all people coming on, and it's like a living document, right? So if we kind of come across something new or a new way to do it, do something, then we put that in the handbook. And so things like we've got one, like a full document just on communication. It's like, we prefer video calls because we like to see the emotion of people. It's very difficult to do without seeing that. And even like there's a section in there about like using emojis. It's like, you don't really read what's going on. If it's just text, you're like, is this guy like, is he angry at us?
Yeah.
But, throw an emoji in there. It really helps.
Yeah.
And then obviously it's got like, the Git workflow, how to write great commit messages. And so that's the first thing. So after the application process, we'll send the handbook, and kind of just get everyone on the same page with that. And that just enables us to, spike up teams, whenever we need. But yeah, we've worked with some great developers over the years for sure. Some really talented developers that have moved on to, I think they've moved on to Microsoft, to Square, and I'm still in contact with all those people. Yeah.
Booking, I think Booking as well, right? Booking.com or...
Nice.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
So he was based in Denmark. It still is in Denmark. Great guy. And he, like, that time zone was difficult. Melbourne to Denmark. Actually, Steve, you mentioned the travel. So I lived in San Diego before Steve did, and actually in the same spot, like Ocean Beach in San Diego. So that was 2011, and then I did a year down in South America, and then 2 years in San Francisco, a year in Berlin, and a quick stint in Tokyo as well. So, like, the good thing about already being remote was that we could just go wherever we want. And so, like, in my 20s, that was great. I could tick boxes and build a product at the same time, which big travel box for
That's
them.
special.
Yeah, you don't get
And
that
just
in many industries.
two things to extend on that, and it's probably like a minor point, but you mentioned about the video, just to come back to that. We also apply that to customers as well. So if it's a call with a customer, a lot of customers won't turn their video on, but we still will. So even if you're just talking to yourself on the video, just because everything's remote and it's all about just being upfront and seeing the person and kind of putting yourself out there, and that's who you are, and you're going to see me. And even if you're not on the screen, you're still gonna see me. And it helps kind of push through to create those relationships as well. And in terms of the relationships, we talked about, one of the guys that worked with us that went on to booking.com, and he worked with us in Melbourne and then actually went back to Europe.
Okay.
And then was kind of like, oh, can I get a letter of referral? And we're like, what are you talking about?
Right,
Just keep working.
Just keep working. Come work for us again. And, he became a great friend. And there's a lot of people that we've worked with over the journey. And, people go on and do things. It's hard to, keep all the great people that you want to keep. But we've actually managed to stay friends with a lot of these people, even when they've kind of moved on. And so I think, building those relationships, which I think we're both able to do, and then you're able to do that with customers as well, and it's I think super important across the whole business.
The Tuesday morning meeting. So Steve and I meet every morning for me, and it's usually Steve's afternoon. So his Monday afternoon, my Tuesday morning. That call goes for like way longer than it needs to, right? Like we're not just covering work stuff. He's sending me photos of like his stairs that he's been working on. He's put tiles on his stairs. And sometimes if I'm working at home, my partner Eve will be like, "What are you guys talking about?" Like, oh, we're just like we're building our relationship still. Like we've got to have that. We are at opposite ends of the world. Well, it's actually not too bad across the Pacific. But yeah, we've got to keep that relationship going,
But we've also had times where we slipped out of that, right, Pat? And then we're like, oh, we need to do like course correction, and so then we're like, okay, well, we need to make sure that we're sticking to that because there's risks involved. Pat said, even if it's talking about emojis or it's talking about how often you're actually talking to each other face to face. You've kind of got to have the discipline to kind of keep that and work hard at it because, it's relationships, just the same as your home relationships. You got to keep working at it.
Yeah.
God, there's so much good stuff you guys have said in there. It's one of these things where I'm like, I have a next topic for us to talk about, but I just kind of let it trail here because I'm just like so in with you guys. One of the things I really like what you said here at the end was about it being like relationships because, people say, oh, marriage is hard. And one of the things my wife and I talk about where like there's a difference between it being like hard versus just you have to work hard at it. Like that doesn't make it a hard thing. It just means you have to be very intentional. And so even before you said it's like relationships, I'm like, you have to be intentional in order to kind of sustain these long-term relationships and these long-term connections. And sure, distance does add some of those costs, but in the end, I think it probably is you're for the better having done it because the ones in person still need the work. It's just not always as transparent that it needs it. And I literally told my leadership team 2 weeks ago, I was like, you know what? I feel like I have become so busy with all the operations of the company that I haven't been able to be social. And for the first 12, 13 years of the company, I had a co-founder and he was the one kind of running the businessy side and I was running the people and the tech. So I just got like part of my job was just to be friendly and cool, whatever. And then when he stepped away and I become the CEO and the CFO and the COO, as we were all talking about juggling things, I was like, there's so many things on my plate. I don't have time for this. And I just realized I'm like, people don't know what's going on with my life. I don't know what's going on with theirs unless their supervisor tells me. And the last just couple weeks, I'm just like, hey, it's Monday. Here's what I did over the weekend. What are you guys feeling? Just this kind of very small, light, personal things. And it's so much better. Like you mentioned, I just appreciate you mentioning falling off. People aren't often going to talk about like, yeah, I kind of lost this thing. I'm supposed to be here on the podcast telling you how great I am, and sometimes we don't get our things right. So anyway, thank you for sharing that. I feel like this is therapy for me. So the actual next topic that I did want to bring to you guys about was about hiring. You mentioned a few times about these wonderful people that you've had kind of working with you. You're still connected with them. You're still friends. And one of the questions I always ask, and I have to kind of like wrap it up after this because obviously we can go forever and it's already 45 minutes, was what has your experience in hiring been like? And I both want to know in terms of like hiring Laravel developers. You know, some people say, oh, well, will it be easy or hard to hire Laravel developers? But I also think that you guys are doing something right. You've got people you want to continue these relationships with and you're so proud of. Like, what's your hiring secret? So I think those are my two pieces, is sort of like, what has hiring Laravel developers specifically been like? And is there anything where you think like, hey, if you want to hire like we do, here's a tip I'd have for you?
Right. Well, I guess there's definitely no magic.
Before Pat answers, I was going to say we haven't spoken about the bad experiences.
Yeah.
We leave those ones out,
yep.
which we've had. Pat.
Yeah, I think with Laravel, it attracts entry level developers as well, right? So it's so easy to kind of spin up a Laravel app and like think that you're a Laravel developer, right? And what is that called? The Dunning-Kruger effect, right? But what we've found is that as long as you find the right people, you can kind of bring them along for the journey, right? And they might fall off at a certain point where you've got to get into more complex stuff, and that's fine. There's still going to be things that they can tackle. But yeah, I guess, and Steve and I was chatting about this yesterday. It's like, it's not, are we hiring at the moment or are we ever hiring? It's like we're kind of just always looking for great people, and then skill them up where they need to be skilled up. Yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword with Laravel because you can get crazy good developers, but you can get entry level as well. But yeah, I guess Laravel has, even the first-party packages, you get a lot for free. So yeah, as long as critical thinking is very important.
Yeah,
and I think we've also found, Pat, right, that when you look at entry or mids or senior. And a lot of people, there's a lot of seniors. Everyone seems to be a senior.
Yeah.
Seniors,
And so within the senior, you've got to break down, okay, well, who is actually senior? Because everyone seems to be.
Yeah, I interviewed a senior once that had never written a test. And so I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But generally it's been a pretty good experience.
Okay, love to hear that. I have so many more questions, you guys, but because we're tight on time, I'm just going to kind of wrap us with these last ones, which is, I just want to kind of check in is are you hiring? And is there anything you guys want to plug? I'm just going to throw those out there.
Well, I think as Pat, just mentioned, is that we're kind of always on the lookout, and if it's particularly someone that we want to work with, so always hiring, in a way. I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing or a luxury or what it is, but that's just how it is, and that's how we've kind of always been. In terms of what we want to plug, we're just working on some great stuff. We kind of set out where we wanted to take the product to, and we kind of really feel now that we're making some really good strides on that. So the stuff that Pat's working on in terms of interface, UI, dashboards and new reporting modules we're going to be doing, and moving into kind of a more advanced checklists, inspections kind of modules, and it's kind of an exciting position that we're in at the moment. We'll just keep plugging away with CMMS and
the C is for computerized.
Yes, exactly.
That's my favorite part of the whole interview. I'm sorry.
But it just shows where the industry has come from. When we were kind of first started looking at how we're going to market this product, we're basically like, okay, well, they're all still calling themselves computerized. Why is that? And so that kind of gives you an idea of where the industry's come from. And a lot of the major competitors are pre-internet, so they've had to move these 30-year-old, 35-year-old products over to web, and so that creates opportunity, and that creates an avenue for other products to come in, and that's where that's where we see ourselves fitting, as I mentioned, not just repeating what's been done in the future. So trying to differentiate ourselves from a technology basis. So hopefully we're going to be the non-computerized maintenance management system.
Yeah,
love it.
Just make the C redundant. That'd be nice.
Yes.
If in the lifetime of the product we could drop that C and just be a maintenance management system, I would be a happy man.
That does make a lot more sense. I'm just thinking, is it a computerized CRM? Is it a computerized CMS, for content management? I'm like, no, nobody else has got that. But I hear it. It's specific to the industry. All right, last question. It's for both of you, but this time we're going to start with Steve. If somebody handed you $100 million today and said, walk away from your business, take $100 million, what do you do tomorrow?
It's a good question. I don't really think about that too much. I don't know whether, like as I was saying before, culturally, it's not Australia's big on the tall poppy syndrome, and it's not a big thing to go around talking about, and
right.
How much money and what you're going to do and all that kind of stuff. So it's not really something I would think about too often. I guess I would come back to what I was talking about before, is that both Pat and I enjoy the building process, and irrelevant of money, is that I think if you don't have that, you're kind of behind from the start. If you start out being like, all right, I'm going to do this, because honestly, doing agency work, which I think you're involved in agency work as well, right? A number of people you'd come along that kind of haven't not much idea, but they're like, I've got the best idea and I'm going to make a whole heap of money. And it's like, all right, okay. And so it kind of all becomes about that, and not about just the building process. And so, we just focus on that. And then if you get something at the end of the day, if you're able to be successful, then fantastic.
Great.
We'll worry about that when that happens.
Yeah. Okay. Pat, how about you?
Well, I knew this question was coming, and I've been thinking about it since I saw it, and I'm like, I don't know what I would do. And I was talking to my partner, Eve, last night about it. She's like, oh, you've always wanted to, deck out a van and just go around Australia with the kids. And I was like, that's probably what I would do, But I would have to, like Steve said, I would have to come back and start building something again. I don't know what that would be. Maybe I would find that on the trip.
Yeah.
But got to be building.
I love it. There's a
always
guy in the
building.
Laravel community. Yeah, great. Always be building. It's not quite as good as ABC, but still, it's still good. There's a guy in the Laravel community who, as soon as he sold his thing, he bought a vintage Jeep and just spent months just fixing it up, and then he started building something else. He's like, cool, done with the Jeep.
And then he bought a yacht.
Time to start my news. And and then he started another software product. So it's just sort of like, there's both of those, right? There's just kind of like wanting to do something with your hands and get away from it, be with your family. And then there's also like, I think I probably have to build again. So, well, you guys, I'm going to try and wrap it because we're 10 minutes past when I'm supposed to cut this. But that is just a sign we're having a great conversation. You guys were incredible, and I really appreciate you hanging out and sharing kind of your experiences with us. And thanks for being here today.
Thanks for
having us. Thank you, Matt. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Okay, the rest of y'all, we will see you next time.